this has broken or is not wanting to work. So combined with the fact that I live in South London and there is like ambulances and helicopters and building works going on, in advance I'm going to apologise for whatever audio happens in this video, but I think it's going to be okay. You just might hear some things, and it's not going to get in the way of us discussing what we're going to discuss today, which is Section B from English Language, Papers 1 and 2. Section B recently has been freaking everyone out. Everyone I've been teaching recently have been really nervous about Section B. People kind of don't know where to start, they don't know what to do, and it's kind of like an ooky spooky scary bit that people kind of just leave because they're so focused on the first half of the paper. This video, like things I'm going to be talking about, they're going to be really relevant to AQA and Edexcel. They're probably also going to be relevant to IGCSE. It's all kind of the same kind of stuff that they want from you. There's not too many ways to like mark creative writing. I have a master's degree in it. There's not too many ways to mark it. So across the exam boards, their mark schemes, which I'll sort of be looking at and talking you through, they're kind of the same. So even if you're like, oh, I'm not doing Edexcel, or I'm not doing AQA, they are pretty much the same, and there's like good stuff to be learned just from really getting familiar with them and knowing what they want. The GCSE language papers really want to do one thing, and that is they want to walk you through every single assessment objective that they can. So if you look at the first half of the paper, you'll notice that you sort of move through from A01 to A02 to A03, and then you like combine it all at the end. You look at like structure separately, you look at language separately, you look at understanding separately, and then you combine them all into one longer question. That's generally the way they work. Section B gets neglected because it feels like it's not part of that, or it feels less technical, feels more creative. I think it's, personally, believe it or not, the woman with a master's degree in creative writing thinks that it's more fun than Section A. But it's worth half your marks, and it's really worth thinking about looking at, because although you might think, oh, it's just like talent, it's just ability, there are really good things that we can learn and do. I'm probably going to do a whole video on just like different sentence structures that you can use in your Section B, so look out for that. But just for today, I thought what would be really useful, and what I've been doing with a lot of my students who've been quite nervous about Section B, is just sort of like running through everything, making sure that we understand the aims of the paper, the aims of the questions, but also just like a few really quick top tips just to like boost your confidence, get you going, and keep you really familiar with the paper and the mark scheme and kind of what's expected to you. What's expected from you. So Section B varies between papers, but generally it can fall into either like fiction and descriptive writing, or it's like writing with a purpose, and there's a very specific kind of writing that they want you to do. It's about half your marks, which is quite a lot for one question, so it should take you about half your time, roughly, depending on who you are, how fast you take to read, if you know you're really good at it, etc, etc. But good rule of thumb is, I think AQA you get an hour and 45 minutes. So use 15 minutes of that for reading, 45 minutes for Section A, 45 minutes Section B. Simple, easy, right? So it asks you to do an extended piece of writing, and generally the mark schemes are requiring you to talk about structure, to do things with language, to do all sorts of stuff, and it can get a bit overwhelming, especially when it's in that sort of like mark scheme exam board speech and that sort of way that they talk. So we'll break that down in a minute. So we're gonna start the wrong way around. We're gonna start with paper 2, because paper 2 is a little bit more complicated, and people tend to feel a little bit more intimidated by it because it's got sort of more tightly, I would say, structured question than paper 1, which is like a bit more free and creative and you can do what you want. The key to paper 2, if you're not going to take anything else away, is that the examiner should know what form you're writing in without seeing the question. Ignore the helicopter. So what you really need to know is the genre. So if you're writing a letter, a speech, an article, the audience, so who you're writing for, who you're speaking to, if it's a speech, and then purpose, which generally is like to persuade or to inform or something like that. And those are really important because they kind of echo the words of the mark scheme, and they really kind of like break down the like big scary question for you. So the best way to figure out how to answer a question to use mark scheme. So I've got here the AQA and the Edexcel mark schemes up on my laptop. If I look away from you, that's what I'm looking at. They're right here, as in the prize. Let's start with AQA. So AQA often give you a statement and then they tell you what the purpose is, your genre, your audience, your purpose, and you basically have to say whether or not you agree with the statement or to argue your point of view with the statement. They split up, even on the paper itself, you'll notice that they split it up into 2 different sets of marks. So you get 24 and then you get 16. 24 is for content organisation, 16 is for technical accuracy. So that's your AO5 and AO6. AO5 is your content and organisation. AO5 is just how you say things and put it on the paper. You need to communicate clearly and effectively. Say your point. Don't worry about sounding clever. The cleverest thing you can do is to just say your point in a nice, simple sentence that everyone can understand. You need to adapt your tone, style, and register for the task at hand. For example, if I was talking like this as the President of the United States, this would not be a serious speech, right? But here it's fine because it's a more casual thing. So you need to figure out what your tone is, right? If I came up here and started talking to you like a politician does, it would feel really out of place. So your writing has to be sensitive to that idea. You know yourself when words feel casual and when words feel formal because you talk to your friends differently to how you talk to a teacher, right? So just let your brain take over. You understand that you're needing to be slightly more formal. Generally, they're quite formal. And use your techniques accordingly. Switch your techniques, your anecdote, whatever, your rhetorical question, your emotive language, switch it to be slightly more formal because then you're adapting. That's called adapting your tone and style and register. For the very, very top band for AQA, we're still on AQA. Sorry, Edexcel people, you gotta wait. But for the very top band to get between 19 and 20 marks, you have to have lovely communication that is compelling, so it makes you feel something, it makes you want to change your mind, it makes you want to agree with something, it achieves its purpose. Once again, genre, audience, purpose, gap. Your tone, style and register need to be really strongly and confidently adapted. So that doesn't just mean like if it's a letter writing dear at the beginning and then from at the end. The whole thing needs to be completely absorbed in the genre it's in. You need to use extensive and ambitious vocabulary, and it says a sustained crafting of linguistic devices. Be really careful with this. If you're using words and you don't know what they mean, I think that actually reflects worse on you than, or like does you worse than if you use simple language that you're completely in control of. You should, in your revision, be actively trying to use more words and expand your vocabulary and read widely and all that really good stuff that's going to help you not just in English language and not just in this question, but it will help you in English literature as well. It will help you in other humanities subjects. The more words that you have access to, the more you can express yourself, the more accurately and succinctly you're going to be able to answer any exam question. Maybe not maths, but you know, you never know. But you should be trying to include these like good vocab words all the time. But if you're not 100% sure of what a word means and you use it incorrectly, you're not showing that you're in control of your work. And you kind of need to come across as a confident, controlled writer who knows what they're saying. And this is true for both paper 1 and paper 2. You need to be really in control. Confidence, being the person that's like, this is me, I'm going to get really good mark, show off to your examiner, show off what you can do, but also be aware of your own limits. There are words that I don't know. And I have an English degree and a master's in creative writing, and there are words that I would use and I would be like, I don't think I'm using that right. So I don't use it. Simple as, easy peasy. Sustained crafting of linguistic devices is such a complicated sentence, but it basically means using literary techniques and devices throughout in a good way. So that is things like rhetorical questions, repetition, emotive language, anecdotes, all that kind of stuff. Rule of 3 or tricolon if you prefer to call it that. All of that stuff that helps you make a point, that fits in nicely with your tone and that really suits the question. Things even like collective pronouns if you're writing a speech, using we instead of I, those things will count towards that. So be really sure and confident in your techniques and go for it and use them I want to say carefully, especially though ones like emotive language. If you use emotive language the whole way throughout, it takes away from itself because it loses its impact. So just be aware that you're using it to build to a point and then come away from it. They want to see compelling writing that incorporates a really wide range of ideas. And the way that you do that is you spend a little bit more time on planning, you put a little bit more thought into it. I can see when a student gives me something if they've planned it or if they haven't planned it. When I'm doing one-on-one lessons, I can see when my students have just written something and given it to me, or if they've just kind of like really put the thought in and they've come up with some really strong ideas and they've used them well. There is an obvious difference. It is not something your teachers say to you just for fun. If you plan your answer, I know it sounds so cliche, but you actually will write faster in your exam because you're not thinking so much. You also are gonna come up with better ideas, stronger ideas, and you're also gonna hit our next point on the mark scheme, which is fluently linked paragraphs with seamlessly integrated discourse markers. Once again, that is the example being really, really wordy, but you basically want really nice paragraphs that move from one to the other really seamlessly, and you want to be showing the whole time what you're talking about, like just how you might have a topic sentence or a point in a PEA paragraph or a PEAL paragraph or a PHAC paragraph or a PETSL paragraph, whatever paragraph you do. You want to basically be using really lovely discourse markers which tell sentences which tell the reader or the examiner in your case what's going on, what you're arguing, what you're saying. AO6 is technical accuracy, so they want to see a wide range of vocab, they want to see sentence structures that you use for a reason, and they want to see that you've got really lovely spelling and punctuation. To get a really good mark for AO6, which is worth up to 16 marks, so it's really, if you think about it, you've got questions in section 1 that are worth 8 marks, so just this one component of section B is worth 2 of those questions. It's so important. They want you to have a wide range of punctuation that's used. So exclamation marks, semicolons, dashes, commas, question marks, all that kind of good stuff. Use it all. There is a finite amount of punctuation in the world. Just try and use all of them. Maybe not like an at or like a hash, but use all the good stuff. They want you to use standard English consistently and appropriately, and they want you to show something which is called secure control of complex grammatical structures. So basically, like I said before, confidence, showing off that you know what you're doing, and being really sort of secure in the structure of your work. They want, again, extensive and ambitious use of vocab. So use a wide variety of words. Don't use words like very as much as possible. Try and use other alternatives. I often say also get rid of the word that. You don't need the word that a lot. It makes it feel clumsy, it can make it feel a little bit less mature as a piece of writing, but only use words if you're really 100% sure that you know what they mean. If you don't know what it means, you're going to trip yourself up. You're not showing that you're in control of those complex grammatical structures, even though it's language and not grammar. But you know what I mean. Looking at the Edexcel mark scheme is really similar to AQA. So everything I've just said does apply to you. You can get up to 24 marks for your AO5, just like AQA, and they want you to communicate clearly, effectively, and imaginatively. And you've got to choose your tone, style, and register for the appropriate purpose. So it's like I've just said, right? They want it to be nicely organised, and they want you to use grammatical features, structural features, all sorts to make it nice and coherent. They're looking for a nice, tidy piece of work that's well written, essentially. To get a level 5 response, which is up to 24 marks, you need to shape your audience response nicely and subtly. You need to use sophisticated tone, style, and register. So once again, be aware of who you're writing to, who you're writing for. They also want you to manipulate complex ideas, so sort of play with complex arguments, so that's where your planning really comes in, and they want you to utilise a range of structural and grammatical features to support coherence and cohesion. So use your grammar as your friend to do what you want it to do. The same thing kind of with AO6 is using a range of vocab and sentence structures. Notice how heavy both mark schemes are on vocab and sentence structures. Both exam boards care so much about vocab and sentence structure and punctuation that it's worth your time getting really to grips with those, probably outside of a question, just looking at different sentence structures, being aware, reading magazine articles and seeing what sort of language they use, or how they use punctuation, looking at speeches and seeing how they structure sentences to sort of build to that climax that you need in a speech. Being really aware of that stuff is where you're gonna really, really do yourself like good work, good favour, because it's like embedded in both mark schemes for both exams. Just like AQA, Edexcel is really asking you to use punctuation accurately to aid emphasis and precision. So that means using your exclamation marks sparingly, don't just use them throughout. Using a wide range of sentence structures to achieve effect, short sentences to make short, sharp points, and longer sentences to make really nice, long, sort of trailing following points that work and follow each other really nicely. That was like paper 2. Paper 1 is a little bit looser, a little bit freer. It's something that feels more fun, at least if you're someone like me who really likes writing, and you get to choose your question, which people like as well. So you're either writing a description, they give you a picture, AQA do at least, and they ask you to sort of write something inspired by the picture, or they ask you to write a story. Again, you're writing to AO5 and AO6, so it's a lot of the stuff that we've just spoken about. So it's using different forms and purposes and audiences and being aware of your language and punctuation. The same can be said as well for imaginative writing, as they call it, in section B of paper 1 for Edexcel. They want you to be aware of your purpose, audience and form, which is just genre, audience and purpose with a different word and different order. But they want you to have clear organisation. Both exam boards ask for this, clear organisation. Please use paragraphs. That it comes up in exams in the mark scheme. They say use paragraphs and people don't do it. So use your paragraphs. You also need to be aware of incorporating lots of literary techniques. So that's the range of literary techniques is the difference. You might use rhetorical questions in a speech. You might not use them in a description or a story. You might use a simile in a speech. You might not use it in a letter. You could use it in a magazine article. That's where it comes in. Being really aware of what you're speaking about, who you're speaking to, and the kind of appropriate language is the key to these 2 questions. Be really careful with paper 1 that if you're doing a description, you're writing a description, and if you're writing a story, you're writing a story. The easiest way to kind of like navigate that is to get rid of a main character if you're writing a description. You don't need a main character, and you don't need things to happen. Think of it as like a 3-second recurring video that's on loop. So nothing's really going to happen, but things can be moving. So you might talk about a truck driving down the street, but the truck's not going to like go through your window into someone's house. You might talk about a sandstorm in a desert, but the sandstorm isn't going to wrap your narrator up and like throw them out somewhere. So just be really aware that you're writing description that doesn't really move, or you're writing a story which does, and it needs a beginning, middle, and really solid end. You should be using and preparing for your exam by using lots of different words, lots of different literary techniques, and just writing, but also read speeches, there's always speeches online, read speeches, read opinion articles, read bits of fiction, descriptions. You can go online so easily nowadays and find stuff and just like gorge yourself in it. And you can take lines, take the odd line from Joan Didion writing about parts of America, take like the odd line from, I don't know, some opinion article about like food or something. You can even write a list as part of your plan, especially for description or telling a story for paper 1, of like simile, metaphor, colour imagery, using 5 senses, using alliteration, and tick them off as you go so that you know you've got a wide range of techniques. So that's basically a really quick overview of section B for both papers and across 2 exam boards. The key things that you need to remember are just to adapt to your audience and adapt to your purpose and make your tone change, as well as structure it really nicely. Going forward, I will be making videos on different sentence structures, how to use different literary techniques, how to do things like similes in a way that doesn't feel overdone, doesn't feel boring, like fast as a cheetah, small as a snail, and things like that. So like, do like and subscribe if you found this useful or you want those videos in the future. Ask me any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you have any questions about your paper or how to prepare or things like that, let me know. But yeah, thank you for hanging around till the end, even with the negligible audio quality, and I'll see you guys next time for some more lovely GCSE preparations, because they're important. Have fun revising, and I'm gonna go and try and get my mic to work.